America. My name is Osei-Frimpong. I come to you live every Monday and Thursday. Monday I do a relationship show. Thursday I do a politics show. Except my relationship show is more holistic because I know I don't not only want to get you laid, I also want you to get in a loving relationship where you don't end up divorced. So I'm trying to think about a more holistic understanding of romantic relationships. And towards that end, I'm reading this book right now, Haven in a Heartless World by Christopher Lasch. It's actually it's good if you like high theory about this kind of stuff. His general argument is that we've outsourced a lot of the family responsibilities to professionals actually, who in civil society who don't have the same interests in both family unity and just human agency as we do. For example, the juvenile courts, the teachers, the child welfare experts, the therapists, all of the experts with their master's degrees telling us how and what we're doing right and wrong in raising our children. We've kind of outsourced all of those family decisions onto them, and then we're surprised when our children are a little bit aimless because it turns out that they won't necessarily give you a unified understanding of the child, and not just aimless but also feckless, because that's not really a great generator of human agency. Although it seems like it, it's actually not, because all those actors, many of them are commercial actors, so they have their own interests, right? So we've outsourced this job to all of these people who have their own interests. It's like outsourcing parenting to your kid's football coach, right? Like your kid's football coach might care about your kid, but they also want your kid to win. So that's not going to be a substitute for being a parent, right? In theory, depending on who you talk to, families are supposed to be havens from civil society, some of the more cold and pernicious aspects and warring interests of civil society. But if we bring those into the family, it's like letting the vampire in, and you're letting market civil society into to decide your family dynamics. And it turns out that if you give your child over to the commercial order, then they will be exploited by the commercial order, not protected from it. Right? So all of these, so his argument is that all of these other people who've kind of been empowered by capitalism are supposed to end up going into the family and inserting capitalism like into the family, but the family's supposed to be a haven that's protect kids from the more pernicious and predatory aspects. So he charts us to the Industrial Revolution, where we took production out of the home and put it into a factory, and then we took management of production out of conventional wisdom and put it into like all of those MBAs and an expertise of management and what should be produced. And now the last thing we took out of the home was, how to raise kids and the administering of the family. We've now outsourced that and taken that out of the home and tried to industrialize that and divided that up amongst the various healthcare professionals, and we've medicalized it in a weird way. All of that might not be exactly productive of, a good work ethic, because if you don't know, depending on which kind of family you're raised in, family is where you actually develop your work ethic. I know my kids get it from not only watching me, but I run them. I run the heck out of my kids, and I run them, like I said, if they're not crying, I'm not parenting. I run them, and someone who gets paid to run them and who gets paid to work them might not work them as hard because they might want to try to keep them happy. I don't care about keeping them happy. I want them to be good at what they do. So I drive my kids pretty hard, harder than you can probably find a coach to do. And not just a coach, but like same with academics and everything else, right? So insofar as you get work ethic from your family, he's arguing that that's actually doing something to the national work ethic insofar as we've kind of doled out all of these responsibilities that used to be in the family to professionals on civil society who will now just try to make them, happy, right? And so what's funny is he goes like, look, this is a problem for individual agency and reason, because at first, if you fought against if you fought against authority, you were fighting against the church, and then law emerged as an organizational principle in society, and if you fought against authority, you were fighting against the law. Now, social science has emerged as the organizing principle. So if you fight against authority, you're actually fighting against reality. You're fighting against facts as determined by social science. And we just been through this pandemic where a lot of people, including me, were seen as unscientific. Like, follow the science, follow the facts, as if and science, social science, and science is supposed to make our political decisions for us, and that eviscerates agency, human agency, as like a motor of history in general. But it also kind of outsources the responsibility for making decisions onto an algorithm. And we can't be surprised when AI take this up and we start outsourcing decisions to AI, because we're used to outsourcing decisions to professionals, and then we convince ourselves that AI is the professional. And I could see it starting in some sphere that's moderately benign, like a restaurant uses AI to recommend new dishes to you, dishes that you haven't tried, based upon dishes that you have tried, right? And then more and more, some of these kids use GPT in ways that I would find unbecoming. I was talking to a person who's part of a group who's trying to solve a group conflict, and so they asked AI, and now they have a policy of asking AI because that way they get an objective view of it. But it really just gets everybody. It outsources the responsibility for thinking onto an algorithm, so you're plagiarizing other people's thoughts. So it's not objective, it's just programmed to tell you what you want to hear. So let me just read the passage, right? As religion gave way to law as the principal course of social cohesion, law to social therapy, the governing classes no longer attempted to mediate their pretensions with appeals to legitimacy. They appealed only to the unmediated authority of fact. I no longer have to make an argument for the legitimacy of my claim. I can just say, like, well, this is a fact and I'm a scientist. And that be done. And it's funny because now gaslighting is a thing, because that's the response to the abuse of facts and the abuse of authorities. All right, so they asked not the citizen or the worker submit to legitimate authority, but that he submit to reality itself. This is page 23 of the book Haven in a Heartless World by Christopher Lasch. So you have to submit to reality. And that's the discourse now. That's a form of social control that's not religious, that's not legal based, because there you have to make either an appeal to God and faith or an appeal to argument in the law. But now it's just an appeal to science. Right. To assure the individual that resistance is not unprincipled, as it would be in theological or legal terms, but unrealistic. If you resist what we're doing, you are unrealistic. Yeah, there are a few gems in here, but I'm going to read one more, which I think is fascinating. And he talks about in the early 20s and 30s when people start to realize that families don't really protect you from the market influence. Yeah, they just get market actors to start dealing with families as self-interested, rational actors who are like individual, atoms, like individuals, self-interested individuals, and using their rationality with respect to how to get what they want for their kind of narrow self-interest, and they take that sensibility into the family. So it's not a haven from that sensibility. It actually is the Trojan horse for that sensibility to get into intimate relations. And apparently theory was behind this, and So each member of the family pursued his interests. This is page 35 of the same book. Each member of the family pursued his interests as if they were part of, civil society or market-based civil society. And if this is true, even the nuclear family no longer existed in isolation from the rest of society. Instead of serving as a refuge, it more and more closely resembled the harsh world of work, right? So those vows for richer, for poorer, for better, for worse, those stop even making sense, stop being intelligible, because obviously if it's a relationship between individuals, it's supposed to be a market relationship, which means this relationship is just for the best deal. I got to quit you. I got to return. Can I get a newer model? That's fine, but you have too many miles on you. Even if I drove you myself, I'm going to get a newer model with, a fresher fit, right? So relationships just became another sort of commodity that you have no more loyalty than the NFL. And remember, the NFL, they can just cut you. It's not like Major League Baseball. Like the NFL, they just cut you. You're just done. That's a wrap. You get cut. So that was what happens when that sensibility gets moved into the family. It stops being a haven. And his argument is that means you need to change the outside world to support families. You can't just make families more robust, because it doesn't quite work like that. So you have to make families more robust by thinking about the outside world and the sensibility of the world outside of the family. But what's he goes in when he talks about parental authority came to rest purely on the provision of material resources. Even children started to think of their parents as just mere providers. They're little mercenary children. And parents themselves adopted those same arguments as well, this is my house, I provide for the house, you follow your rules. But then what happens when the children have other options, right? And he says, at the same time, the industrialization of production and bureaucratization of welfare undermine the family's capacity to manipulate social rewards. So in a world of public housing, in a world where children have options to go outside of your house and your rules and resources, and now people who now get paid to undermine your authority, what happens when all you wield is authority over material resources? Or if you're just poor and you can't provide the material resources, right? So you created these kind of mercenary children who have and then it turns out they have a mercenary relationship with you. And then you can't provide. But you treat them as if the only thing you provide is material resources anyway. So when you stop being able to provide material resources, or they find a different way to get those material resources, the love goes away. Right? Parents without property to pass on to their offspring could exact obedience only by appealing to a sense of duty and deference and filial piety. In other words, hierarchical principles that have little place in a society based on rational self-interest. Right? So the spirit of economic rationality had become so pervasive in modern society that it invaded even the family, the last stronghold of pre-capitalist modes of thought and feeling. Right? So just watch how you threaten your kids. Because if you threaten them with any sort of material needs, what happens when they can either undermine your ability to provide those material needs anyway, or get those material needs from someplace else? Then you've told them the basis of your authority, and now they've strategized to undermine the basis of your authority. So just think about what that means. Go on. So his idea is that the family should never be a haven for sentiment, as opposed to civil society strictly, because that doesn't make sense, because in the family you prepare them for civil society. So the family shouldn't never be this warm and fuzzy place no matter what, because in the family you train them to go out and deal with, out there. Right? So if family's a warm and fuzzy place no matter what, unconditionally, and then they go out there, are they really going to be fit? No, so family's got to be a little bit harsh. It's got to be, there is no basic training to go to war is not, a spa. We're training you because we want you to succeed in war. That means we train you hard here. And that's what families kind of have to be. They have to have an element of that. or else you'll get a kid who can't survive in the harsh world because they're just soft, because you made them soft, right? So insofar as we have a market-based civil society, and family is a place that's supposed to be kind of the training ground for that marketplace civil society, you need families. Family's going to have some edges, and appropriately going to have edges. Don't listen to liberals about this. And then don't listen to those people in civil society who get paid to gaslight, who get paid to blow smoke up your butt, right? And this is why, he talks about how people in civil society who've taken over the role of family, they don't have the same interests. I've had other shows where I talk about, I think therapy is a big racket because it's white women paying other white women to tell, them what they want to hear. And that's a problem. That's not mental health. That's something else. I think that's something else. By the way, nobody really talks like this, and more people should. If you appreciate what I'm doing, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month to keep me doing what I'm doing, because nobody's going to tell you. Go read Haven in a Heartless World by Christopher Lasch, The Family Besieged. It's a brilliant little book. It is. It's not perfect. I think the work I'm doing is going to be, the work I'm working on is going to be a little bit more incisive, but it gets at a lot of the points, and it's a pretty good review of the historical literature up until 78. It was written in 78, but it's actually rather prescient. Now, let's deal with experts. So Christopher Lasch himself, his mother was a PhD in philosophy, and his dad was a Rhodes Scholar. And so when he says that families don't need expertise, he's coming from a very peculiar family upbringing with generally educated and competent people. Other people of other families of his generation, he was born in 34, so the people of that generation who raised kids in that generation, they were just drunk all the time. They were just drunk and then damaged from the war. The various wars, World War I, the Great Depression. So the idea that families don't need, his kind of sensibility that families don't need expertise, I think that's a little bit distorted based on the quality of his own family, the education quality of his own family. And I do think that, being a good parent is a skill. Possibly even being a good spouse is a skill. And it's a skill that needs to be taught. And you cannot expect people to know it any more than you can expect people to just kind of know how to take a derivative and set it equal to 0 to find an integral or anything like that. So that's a little bit. So his arguments against expertise are a little bit dicey, but I do think that his arguments against outsourcing family responsibility to allow 1,000 little experts is not a recipe for success or unified agency amongst the children, right? So I think we just need to help people become better family members, not pretend that there isn't an expertise involved, because I suspect that there is an expertise, or you wouldn't be watching my show. And anybody, by the way, if I have made you a better parent or a better partner, you really should become a member at www.funkyacademic.com, because I put a lot of thought into doing what I do for the people. So being a family member is a matter of expertise. It shouldn't just be outsourced to experts who have their own private interests. Rather, we need to take communicating that expertise, that particular expertise, more seriously and more generally, so that everybody then gains the expertise in the same way that everybody should be able to read and write and do, basic arithmetic. So we need to, 1, stop pretending that there's no expertise involved, and 2, stop pretending that the people who are certified experts with all their master's degrees aren't just hacks trying to game the market for their own benefit, right? So The middle space is there is expertise involved, and we need to get serious about disseminating it in general. Thank you for your time, and I will see you on Thursday talking about something completely or moderately different.